Good afternoon, class. Today we're going to work on the seated figure. I've gone ahead and mapped out, blocked in most of the drawing. I'm going to go ahead and kind of connect and finish off what I haven't done. The important thing to note in this drawing, especially because we have furniture involved here, is that we need to follow the rules of perspective. That things look like they recede as they're going back in space, and that parts, horizontal lines look parallel, more or less, because again, they have to look like they are going into a vanishing point. So, I extend these lines in order to make sure that they do look like they are parallel and also receding. And I try to make those connections throughout the drawing. With the facial features, so I've divided the face, the center line, and I've also noted that the chin, the mouth, the nose, the eyes, the eyebrows, and sometimes the hairline all should be going in the same direction. So it's got to look like if there's a tilt that all of them are tilted at exactly the same angle. Now, that also needs to be taken as a general rule, because sometimes people have like an eyebrow that's a little bit higher than the other one, etc., etc. So, start off with the generalities and then go to the specific. Okay, so I've mapped out the division of light and shadow and gone back and adjusted most of the drawing. So this is good enough to move forward. So I may have to tweak a few things here and there, but at this point, I don't want to waste too much time and get bogged down with details. So I'm going to go ahead and start mapping out the shadow patterns, again going in the same direction. I want to erase some of these guidelines that I put in earlier because they're going to get in the way when I start shading it. Now, I don't want to smear my drawing, so I'm going to use my mol stick to make sure that I'm not rubbing the paper. And again, you can see that when I was doing the outline, parts of it are getting a little blurry. Just gonna lighten up my lines a little bit. Okay, so I've started blocking in this image, and I'm doing it in sections here because it is quite complex. So, this section here, the face will be one section, the legs another section, the chair, this front stool, the background, etc., etc. So, and that's the way I would approach it if I was drawing this from life, because it is quite complex. And it allows me each time I do a section to kind of stand back and evaluate what I have, and if it is actually what is existing in the model, or in this case, in the master copy. Okay, class, so I'm going to go ahead and refine the face now. So what I've done is created parallel lines, so chin to corner of left side of mouth and right side of mouth, to nose, to eye, and the eyebrow, one eyebrow seems to be a little bit higher than the other, but that's okay. So I'm just going to lighten these lines up a little bit. I'm going to make sure I use a new pencil, HB pencil, and I'm already got now basically the general shape. So the eyebrow goes this way, and then there's a slant going this way, and then it looks like there's a curvature like so. Then I want to make sure that I get where the orbital socket is, so I'm going to go more or less from here. Like so. On the other side, okay, actually I already have it here. I'm going to use the edge of the nose to find out where the eye socket is, or eyelid, sorry. Like so. And then I want to check from one eye to the next, okay? So basically there's one eye in between. Let's just double check that. Okay, that looks good. And all of this will end up getting refined, but it's going to give me a little bit more of an idea. Just want to make sure. Okay, good. Shadow pattern, so it looks like it starts in here, comes over, peaks here, then looks like it takes a little bit of a shift. Then over here, now try to get it as close to what you see, but don't freak out if it's a little off, because everything gets adjusted when you start shading it. Then it looks like the shadow comes here, goes over just a little bit, straddles that philtrum, kind of dips down, gets picked back up, upper lip, comes down, over, and this upper lip here to here goes up just a hair, comes back down, over, and hooks back up with the lower lip. So a side note, so from chin to nose, nose to brow, brow to hairline should be more or less the same distance. So if we measure from here to here, here to here, here to here, and that looks pretty good. Looks like this chin could probably get reduced. Need to clean up that, it looks a little off. Okay, then upper lip to lower lip, the shadow pattern. And it looks like it's very light, but I'm going to put that in there like so. Okay, so that's more or less what I see. I'm going to go ahead and put the entire, as a base coat, everything that is in shadow, even though this cheek looks like it's kind of in light. But the base coat is much lighter than what it's going to end up being, so like so. Clean it up. I think this might be off just a little bit. Okay, so now that I have the base coat in, what I'm going to start doing is start pushing some of the values in the figure. And then once I have a little bit of some of So some of the darker values in the figure need to be established before I start putting base coat in the environment, or else the environment and the figure are going to start blending together. Okay, so I'm going to start developing some of the shadows. I'm going into a 2B pencil. So where it's darker here, mainly along the edges, I don't want to necessarily complete them all. I've softened up the core shadow line because I don't want to have to compete with that, and I'm constantly making adjustments. Looks like that line's a little off there. So I can see that this whole line needs to get a little bit darker, and also that the shoulder needs to round off just a little bit. The reason why I'm not doing the background yet is I want to be able to clean up my lines on the figure first. And if I put a base coat, then I'll have to be a little bit more precise. And this allows me to get the value down quicker and then go back into the detail a little bit later. Okay, so I'm laying in the background. So I was just going to do it off camera, but I think that it is important that you guys see which parts I do first. So again, I'm always going to go for the easiest part. So this helps me kind of frame out that leg. And in this case, the background is a little bit darker than that leg. So it's at the right stage now for me to go ahead and do that. So right now I'm going in one direction, but in order to really carve out the difference between the leg, I'm going to have to change directions at one point. I just want to get the base coat in there. Okay, so what's important? We're starting to create the mood of the drawing. So I do need to bond layers together more frequently in order to avoid a kind of a patchiness to it. You can see there's a little bit of a seam starting to happen here. So every time I bond the layer together, it just reduces the amount of contrast. So layer by layer, it's going to get a little bit easier to get to the end. So I just need to keep plugging away and also just refine what I have. So, you know, this value is a little light. I'm not using a 4B now, so I'm just going over that area. The contrast between these values is much less. So trying to get the value first and then come back in and get more of the detail. So the leg of this chair is a little bit darker. Now I'm not trying to get it exactly the right key because I need to always leave myself open to darkening things down until the end. So until the end, I'm just gonna go little bit by little bit by little bit. I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to pull out a reflective light. And then I'm going to, in the flesh, and then I'm going to bond that layer together. So I started saying what was important. So what's important now is that you critique your work and that you start building the relationships between the values. And that takes a little bit of time, right? Because you're building the values through a layer system. And the reason why we're doing that versus just rendering this whole area to the correct value is that we want to create harmony within the actual drawing. Clean up this edge here, that shoulder, that's way too sharp. All right, I'm gonna sharpen my pencils and I'm gonna continue. Okay class, so this is about a little bit further than halfway through the drawing. I've got a lot of the base coat down. I've started keying down certain parts of the drawing that relate to the master to start suggesting the form and where the intensity of the light is coming from. So if I look at it, the light is probably coming somewhere from around here because there's a little bit of a shadow happening here. So it suggests that the light is a little bit below that, as well as there's light coming underneath here, here, and also here, and here as well. But there's a cast shadow being suggested along this side here. So, you know, I think that's probably a safe bet to think that that light is coming from there. And you can see the most intense part of the highest key is around the leg area and potentially here as well. So, and the face seems to be a little bit more submissive to that area there. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is start building up the values in the background here. And as I do that, I'm going to adjust things that I run into. So for instance, this in here, it's a bit complicated what's going on there, but we'll tackle it little by little. Okay, let's get started. So the goal now is to try to key in to get it to the right value. and that the values relate to one another. Okay, that looks good. I'm using a 4B. I'm gonna switch into a 2B just for this section in here. And I also need to be aware of the line. So this is a line from the block in, but here there's really a very thin line, so I need to adjust that as well. I'll put in the base coat first. Okay, so now that I've done a base coat in the background, I need to start like really segmenting each part of it and seeing if it's the right key. So for instance, if I start up here with the hair, if I squint my eyes, the hair needs to be overall darker. So I'm gonna put a wash over the entire thing. So the question is the hair the right value? And the answer was no. So I'm going to overall key that down. Then I'll go into the segments. Overall, this can also be a little bit darker. So then I'll go into the section. This also can be a little bit darker. This section in here could also be a little bit darker. Right in here. It looks like there's... Overall, this could get just a hair darker. And eliminate the line. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is start keying down everything. So I'm going to take a little bit of a pause. That way the video isn't so long. But basically what you're going to be doing, so this value in here is a little bit darker than what I have there. So I'll start keying that down. This value is definitely darker there. This value looks pretty close, but I need to get a little bit darker along the edge. This is a cast shadow. This one gets a little bit darker as it goes towards the body. The core shadow in here could get a little bit darker. Okay, class, so I've gone ahead and keyed down the background, started developing all the shadows. Now I'm going to start working on the leg, and overall everything has been set up, so things should fall into place. I haven't done this in here yet, but slowly but surely I will address all the issues. So again, I'm going to start with the easier part. Looks like there's a little bit of a value missing just along this edge here. This looks like it goes like this and gets a little bit wider than what I actually have it. So now is getting the really minute values and transitions established. And I'm going to develop those little by little. So it looks like there's a core light happening. So in order to do that, I'm going to put a base coat. And it looks like it's a solid value, so I'm going to fill it all in. Trying to make it a flat value. Then I'm going to bond that layer together. Then I'm going to come back in with my eraser. That looks like there's like a light highlight kind of thing starting to happen here. I'm going to just soften up those edges a little bit. So notice that I'm moving around the drawing. I'm not staying in any one place. Right now what I'm trying to do is just establish the correct value ranges between this, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that need to add up. So before I can go back in and just refine the detail. So I'm trying to set up everything so I can get to the detail. And it takes time to do that. You gotta move pretty fast to try to get those generalities in before the model pose is over. Okay class, so now I've gotten 85–90% of the drawing completed. I need to really finalize what's happening. So the values need to be correct at this point. The shape needs to be correct. So if I look at it, and squinting your eyes is going to be a good way of doing this. The hair is still too light. This chest overall is a little bit too light as well. I went back in and started accentuating some of the lines to bring out the drawing a little bit more. So this whole leg could get a little bit darker. So now the final stage is to really lock in the correct value. And usually that will encompass just putting in a wash. So I'm just gonna put a wash over the entire thing. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish up this drawing. So the last part, to bring this drawing to conclusion, you need to make sure that the right value ranges on the master copy and yours are the same. So this value and this value are the same. It could still get a little bit darker. The hair is looking good. The face is looking good. I need to go back in the eyebrows, clean those up just a little bit. That way we can actually see them. Lines as well, look for line quality. You know, is my line too light or too dark? So there's definitely lines that need to be accentuated. Lastly is step back, and you want to feel like this is the highest key. So if that's not the case, you may need to come back in and just put a layer over the whole thing that's in the lights.